Hello and welcome. I'm Asuma Katauka and you're watching the China Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines of this hour. German Finance Minister and Vice Chancellor Lars Klingbeil are headed to China, seeking dialogue in trade tensions as Berlin pushes its de-risking strategy amid Chinese curbs on rare earths and semiconductors that have shaken German industry. Japanese tourism and retail stocks have plunged after China warned its citizens against traveling to Japan following Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi's comments involving Taiwan. As Japan relies heavily on China, Japan's top tourist source with 7.5 million visitors in the first 9 months of this year, which is 28% of all international tourist spending in Japan. Japan will send senior diplomat Masaki Kanai to China as Tokyo seeks to ease a rapidly escalating tension after a row of diplomatic clash, as economists warn that China-related tourism slump could cut more than half of Japan's annual growth. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said a rare earths deal between the United States and China will hopefully be completed by Thanksgiving, following last month's framework that avoided 100% U.S. tariffs and halted China's planned export licensing regime, as Bessent expressed confidence that President Donald Trump and President Xi Jinping's agreements will hold. Hong Kong police have arrested 15 suspects in a major crackdown on money laundering syndicate accused of moving Hong Kong $1.1 billion and seizing 24.7 million Hong Kong dollars in cash and assets from the alleged ringleader's home. Authorities also froze 9 bank accounts and revealed the group had been under surveillance for a year. Chinese scientists discovered micron-sized hematite and megamite in Change E6 lunar soil samples. This latest finding challenges decades of assumption that the moon lacks iron oxides, as it reveals new insights into lunar surface chemistry. China's Type 076 amphibious assault ship Sichuan, also called HULT-51, has completed a 3-day sea trial, marking a critical step towards its planned 2026 PLA Navy delivery, as the country's first supersized drone carrier advances China's naval modernization alongside the newly commissioned Fujian. A 43-year-old Hong Kong veteran rock climber was found dead on Sunday in the Khao Keng Shan area of Tai Lam Country Park after a suspected fall from a 5-meter cliff. Authorities launched a joint search after he failed to return home, with paramedics confirming his death on site and police reporting no suspicious circumstances. Now we start with Japan and China. Japanese tourism-related shares have plunged today morning after China issued a second advisory against traveling to Japan, escalating tensions amid a widening diplomatic rift over Taiwan. Major retailers and travel-exposed companies were among the hardest hit. Isetan Mitsukoshi fell more than 11%, its biggest drop in over a year, while Oriental Land, the operator of Tokyo Disneyland, slid 5%. Japan Airlines also lost nearly 4%. The warning came after Beijing cautioned Tokyo of a crushing military defeat should Japan intervene in any conflict over Taiwan. Japan has urged China to reverse the travel advisory, but the fallout is already rippling through markets, especially as Chinese visitors make up nearly a quarter of Japan's inbound tourism. Economists warn the boycott could cost Japan over 2.2 trillion yen annually and shave off 0.36% of GDP. Retail giants like Muji's parent Ryohin Keikaku and fast retailing also tumbled, while Chinese firms with heavy exposure to Japan saw shares decline on the mainland. With rare earth supply dependence and regional security concerns rising, analysts say the economic toll could extend far beyond tourism. Now for this discussion, we welcome Dr. Satoru Nagao. He's a fellow at Hudson Institute, joins us live from Tokyo. Thank you very much, Dr. Satoru, for joining us again. Good to see you. Dr. Satoru, what is happening with China and Japan now? Do you think China's use of rights enforcement patrols around yesterday we saw that it was using patrols around Senkaku Island, all this that's happened a week, what are we to make of this situation now?
China got the chance to exploit, and that's why they conducted stress test to the new Prime Minister Takaichi's administration. So that's why they are conducting the many methods to make pressure. One is, of course, economy. They try to limit the number of tourists, and it will affect the economy. China has already imposed a restriction to export rare earths, so that's why this is also the one of the two. And the other thing is sending the Chinese ship to the territory sea around Senkaku Island and try to make pressure militarily. So that's why all of these methods, stress test, China is escalating, and Japan is silent. Indeed, in this case, what the PM Takaichi did is simply explained the situation. So this is a fact, because if China invade Taiwan, big war has happened just side of Japan, only 100-kilometer distance. So this means that there is a possibility it will be the crisis for Japan, and Japan will support the United States. Such kind of things the Prime Minister Takaichi explained to reply the question from the opposition party in the National Diet. So this is not a provocative remark, but view from China, this is very exploitable situation. So because they want to get the chance to identify the level of the PM Takaichi's skill or PM Takaichi's administration skill, so that's why they try to start the stress test towards PM Takaichi administration. So then these things happen. This means that in the near future, China will continue to rise up the pressure and check the reaction from the PM Takaichi's government. One of the lines Japan is talking is push the China's general consul on Osaka out of Japan, because his remark is cut PM Takaichi's head if Japan intervene in the Taiwan crisis. It's a little bit too much, not a little bit. It is clearly too much inappropriate attitude as a public servant, as a diplomat. So that's why in this case, of course, Japan is planning to push him out from Japan is possible, and they are planning. But Japan's move is a little bit very moderate and slow, because Japan is a consensus society. So they are talking each other, and if everyone agrees, they will do it. So that's why this situation, pushing him out hasn't happened yet. But this is not mean Japan is very weak. Thank you very much. I should stop it.
Yes, and what do you think, to what extent should governments intervene when geopolitical disputes begin to significantly impact private sectors? In this case, a lot of markets as well as tourism-dependent sectors are hit.
This is stress test. View from this is a temporary situation. So temporarily the damage has happened, but this is not a long-term effect. So that's why even if some economical damage has happened, this is not so important. Important thing is this stress test, because the stress test, after this stress test, China understands the skill or the courage or the PM Takaichi administration. After that, every time, this will be the standard of the China's diplomacy towards her government, PM Takaichi's government. So that's why this test will affect in the long run. So short-term damage should not be the dominate of the decision of the PM Takaichi side, because this test itself is long-term effect. So that's why the temporal economic situation is not a big matter. If the damage is too big, of course, the government prepared something economical support to these industries. But if this is the temporal, and then indeed, the Japanese government do not need to do that, I think.
Yes, indeed. Thank you so much for sharing that insight. Please stay with us as we come back to you. And now we stay on the topic. Breaking news in the China-Japan diplomatic spat. According to reports, Japan has sent Masaaki Kanai, head of the Foreign Ministry's Asia and Oceania Bureau, to Beijing to amid rising diplomatic tensions. The visit follows a diplomatic flare-up triggered by Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi's statement that a Chinese attack on Taiwan could threaten Japan's survival and potentially prompt a military response, a level of candor Tokyo has traditionally avoided to prevent angering Beijing. Is expected to meet his Chinese counterpart Liu Jin-song. Japanese media say Kanai will clarify that Takaichi's remarks do not represent a change in Japan's security policy and will urge China to avoid actions that further strain ties. The tensions escalated after Beijing warned Japan it would suffer a crushing defeat if it intervened over Taiwan and issued a travel advisory urging Chinese citizens to avoid Japan, a move that has raised concerns for Japan's tourism and business sectors. Tokyo has not yet officially confirmed Kanai's trip, but diplomatic efforts are clearly underway to prevent the rift from deepening. Now we welcome back Dr. Satoru Nagao. He's a fellow at Hudson Institute, joins us live from Tokyo. Thank you, Doctor, for staying with us. Dr. Satoru Nagao, looking at this, what is your analysis? What will be on the table in the upcoming talks between Japanese envoy and China now? What can we expect from these talks?
This could be the logical explanation to Japanese thing. So because the PM Takaichi's explanation in the national diet is not provocative, just explains the honest situation. So this is because if the crisis has happened in the Taiwan, this means that the side of Japan, and it could be Japan's crisis is fact, not provocative, just a fact. So that's why there is no reason for China to flare up this crisis. So China flare up this crisis, China escalated this situation because China want to escalate it. That's why this is a stress test as the PM Takaichi explained. So in this case, of course, what Japan can do is, firstly, of course, Japan should be tough, but at the same time, if the misunderstanding is the cause of a problem, this is not your intention. So that's why Japan sent the delegation to explain Japan's attitude is not a provocative one, not changing the Japan's attitude one. This is just explaining about the fact. That is this purpose of this envoy. Keeping the communication means that avoiding the misunderstanding the Japanese think, so that's why they send. But this is not meaning that Japan will accept China's logic. China's logic is China's logic, Japan's logic is Japan's logic, and China's policy is China's policy, Japan's one is Japan's one. So that means that this is a communication and talk, but not concede to China. That this is we should not mistake to understand.
Yes, indeed. With that, I would like to thank Dr. Satoru Nagao for joining us and sharing that insight throughout our news. Thank you very much. Now we move on. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has said that a rare earths deal between the United States and China could hopefully be finalized by Thanksgiving. Speaking at an interview, Bessent has expressed confidence that China would honor the agreements reached in recent negotiations. He has also cited the recent meeting between President Donald Trump and President Xi Jinping in Korea as a key factor in ensuring compliance. Let's listen in.
Maria, I think that Wall Street Journal reporting is not very accurate. We haven't even finished the agreement, which we hope to have done by Thanksgiving. And I am confident that post our meeting in Korea between the two leaders, President Trump, President Xi, that China will honor their agreements. Xi Jinping has great respect for President Trump. The meeting was conducted very high level, and I am confident that they will honor their agreement, and if they don't, we have lots of levers. But to come out and say this before the agreement's even inked, I think is irresponsible.
The comments have followed a framework agreement announced last month, in which Washington agreed not to impose 100% tariffs on Chinese imports, while China agreed to hold off on implementing an export licensing regime for critical rare earth minerals and magnets. Bessent has also dismissed a recent Wall Street Journal report suggesting that Chinese officials plan to restrict access to rare earths for U.S. companies with military ties. Now for this discussion, we welcome Professor Stefan Nagy. He's a professor of international relations, International Christian University, joins us live from Tokyo. Thank you very much, Professor, for joining us again. Good to see you. Thank you. Now, looking at this, to what extent could reliance on a negotiated rare earths arrangement constrain U.S. foreign policy choices toward China?
Well, in the short term, obviously, China has an edge. It has a 90% monopoly in terms of rare earth materials and almost the same in terms of the processing. But it shot its only bazooka in terms of the trade negotiations. And what we've seen now, and it began on October 29th with President Trump's visit to Japan, that they signed a rare earth processing and development agreement in which they would accelerate this move towards moving away from dependency of China's rare earth monopolies. That means that I think in the short term, we're going to see some negotiations between the United States and China, but over the mid to long term, it's going to be more difficult for China to use the rare earth card in its negotiating processes with the Trump administration. In that sense, the Trump administration is going to be in a stronger position a month from now, 6 months from now, and a year from now, and it'll be interesting to see where the trade negotiations go from there.
And what political risks are involved or could arise when economic agreements such as the rare earths access depend on personal diplomacy between Xi Jinping and Trump?
Well, this is the challenge. We have two leaders that really have concentrated most of the power of their states within their hands, and this makes it more difficult in terms of moving forward and finding the institutional pathways to stabilize bilateral relations. Mr. Trump is he's famous for his personalized diplomacy and his strong belief that through his personality, his force of personality, that he can push forward a deal. And President Xi, Secretary General Xi, as well has he's the top of the pile of leaders within the Chinese context. And really, if he makes a decision to move forward, then the deal will move forward. But the challenges on both sides is that the Chinese system is incredibly non-flexible, and the American system is consistently flexible, and it can pivot very quickly, especially with a leader like Mr. Trump. And that means that this deal could fall through, or it could get pushed forward at an accelerated pace, all depending on really what Mr. Trump is going to decide in the coming weeks and months.
And how do you think how might competing internal factions within both these governments use the rare earths deal to advance their own political agendas?
So we should be clear, within the Chinese context, the factions are within the party, between the PLA, the party, and the red aristocrats. The red aristocrats and the PLA would like to somehow stabilize relations with the United States, get things back on the right track, as many would say, and move back to the period that they see was the best part of U.S.-China relations back in the 1990s and 2000s, when they had regular economic and security exchanges, when the trade relationship was not securitized and the economy was stable. And today, the Chinese economy is in deep trouble in terms of the structural issues. More and more people are not consuming, and this creates tremendous pressures against the party and against Xi Jinping. And I think that those parties are going to try to stabilize relationships and find a way to keep the rare earth supply moving to the United States to try and stabilize it. And they may use it actually to push Mr. Xi out. In the United States, whether it's the automobile industry, the defense industry, they all depend on rare earth materials to ensure that the products that they're producing can be produced. And in that sense, they're going to be competing pressures on the Trump administration to keep rare earth materials flowing from China until they find alternative routes. So we're going to see pressure on both leaders. But I think within the mid to long term, I think that there's going to be much less pressure on an American president than a Chinese president, because the American economy is structurally sound, unemployment is low, consumption is high, and again, they have the comparative advantages that China just doesn't have over the mid to long term.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much, Professor, for sharing that. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now, moving on to Europe, Germany's finance minister, Lars Klingbeil, is set to become the coalition government's first cabinet member to visit China, arriving in Beijing amid growing pressure to show Berlin has a firm grip on its China strategy. The visit comes as Germany faces a record trade gap with China and renewed supply chain concerns, particularly around rare earth metals and automotive chips. Klingbeil's trip was delayed for months following the cancellation of Foreign Minister Johann Wadephul's visit after Beijing declined key meetings. Officials say Klingbeil will focus on major trade issues, including China's export limits on rare earths, with positions coordinated in advance with EU trade policymakers. The minister meets Vice Premier He Lai-feng for the German-Chinese financial dialogue, accompanied by Bundesbank President Joachim Nagel and industry representatives later in this week. He will travel to Shanghai to meet German mid-sized firms before continuing on to Singapore. Now for this discussion, we welcome back Professor Stefan Nagy. He's a professor at International Christian University, joins us live from Tokyo. Thank you very much, Professor, for staying with us. Now looking at this, how might this Klingbeil's visit influence Germany's ability to balance economic dependence on China? And why do you think they're sending him and not Wadephul this time? And what will it do for the EU's push for a tougher, more coordinated China strategy?
So there's a lot of moving pieces to the puzzle here, but Germany, like many other European economies, are struggling balancing their economic relationship with China, which is broadly beneficial, and their growing security challenges associated with China indirectly, but also directly. We should remember that it's China through third countries that's keeping the Russian war machine working and keeping those attacks on Ukraine. And the Europeans are deeply worried about this. So they are trying to talk to Beijing through this, and I think they feel that if they don't engage in trade, they're not going to be able to talk about the other issues that they're worried about in terms of Russia's invasion of the Ukraine. On the other hand, they are thinking about how they can keep their economic ties with Beijing, while creating a distance or selectively diversify away from China, or what the Europeans call de-risking. The choice of leaders to visit, again, I think that the Germans want to be sensitive to not send their highest delegation or their highest representative to China to reward China in the case of its bad behavior vis-a-vis supporting Russia's war in Ukraine. But at the same time, they want to show face to the Chinese to show that, yes, Germany takes them seriously, they recognize them as an important economic partner, and that they want to have an economic relationship, but at the same time deal with the security differences that they have.
And do you think there's a difference between German interest and EU's interest here, and how might divergences between German interests and German national interests and broader EU strategic goals complicate Berlin's ability in these talks?
So the European Union is fracturing, and this is a challenge, I think, for any European country's engagement with China or any other country. But Germany is the biggest economy in Europe. It really is the kind of the center of gravity of where the European economy is going. And if they are moving first to normalize or somehow stabilize relations with China, then the question is this: what will other countries do? And not all the European countries are feeling security anxious with China. For example, Hungary has quite strong relations with China, with strong investment in its economy by China, and that's the same with some other Central European countries. So if Germany heads this way, the question is, where will the European Union go? And at this stage, I think it's split. As the more nationalist or more inward-looking parties, like the one in Germany that's been elected, do congregate and get more power, we're likely to see policies that reflect national interests vis-a-vis China rather than European interests. And in this sense, I think we'll see a divergence of not only Germany, but other European countries compared to the broader European Union and their engagement with China.
And in case the talks fail this time, what are the political implications for Germany?
So, these meetings, when a top leader does come, really is not so much about the detailed negotiations, because most of that hard work has been done prior to visiting. They wouldn't have had the visit unless most of the hard work has been done. It's about pushing things across the finish line and putting a bit of icing on the cake, as we say, getting those last minute aspects of whatever deal that they've negotiated. How will this impact Germany over the short term? Any kind of economic injection would be helpful for Germany. Germany's economy is not in the most positive states right now. It's still dealing with the impact of COVID-19, the influx of migrants from 2015, and the general European malaise in terms of their economic development and innovation and competitivity, especially vis-a-vis the United States. So anything will help. The question is how much whatever deal that they agree to will have immediate effects for the ordinary German.
Right. With that, I would like to thank Professor Stefan Nagy for joining us today and sharing that insight throughout our news. Thank you very much. Now we move on to South Korea. Local police has said that South Korean actress and K-pop singer Nana has managed to overpower a home intruder alongside her mother. A man in his 30s broke into the K-pop star's home in the suburbs of Seoul to steal valuables. However, the 34-year-old Nana and her mother were able to fight him off until he was arrested. The suspect reportedly threatened both women and demanded money after breaking into the house. South Korean media has reported that Nana was injured in the scuffle and her mother suffered serious injuries and lost consciousness. They're both being treated at the hospital. Now, the suspect is in custody on charges of aggravated robbery. Now we move on to Bangladesh. Bangladesh is on high alert as security forces intensify their presence ahead of a nationwide shutdown, called just hours before a crucial verdict against former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. The International Crimes Tribunal is scheduled to deliver its judgment on allegations of crimes against humanity tied to the 2024 student-led protests, charges Hasina has previously denied. Tensions have spread across Dhaka and other major cities, with the Awami League announcing a 2-day shutdown starting on Sunday, disrupting businesses and daily movement. Economic stakeholders say they are increasingly anxious about the instability, hoping the upcoming general elections might help restore order. Alongside Hasina, former Home Minister Asaduzzaman Khan Kamal and former police chief Chaudhry Abdullah Al-Mamun were also charged, though Al-Mamun later turned prosecution witness. And that's a wrap on China Report. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.